Hi and welcome. I'm Chris. I'm with the Northern Arizona Celtic Heritage Society, and today Eileen is going to show us how to make her version of Welsh cakes. But first of all, we have some thank yous. Of course, we wouldn't be able to create these wonderful, share this experience with you without the support of Arizona Commission of the Arts, Flagstaff Arts Council, Flagstaff Community Foundation, City of Flagstaff, and Coconino County. So thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us about this.
I first learned to make Welsh cakes when my mother-in-law came to visit us. My husband is from Wales, and he really missed Welsh cakes.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
And so we couldn't find them anywhere. And she came to visit, and I said, would you please show me how to make Welsh cakes? And so this is her recipe. Her name is Grace Roberts. And it's been modified. She and I worked on it together and modified it a little bit because
By modified, you mean made it
so
that
it would
we can
work
measure
with
here?
cups and
Yes.
and it would work with a few different ingredients. For example, my very first ingredient, I have butter flavored Crisco. When she did it, her first two ingredients were lard and butter. And
little bit
so
different.
it was really hard. You can find lard now at more places, but at that time, like 25 or 30 years ago, I couldn't buy lard.
Right.
So I use butter flavored Crisco. It gives it the same texture as the lard and butter. And so it's a very simple recipe as we're going to put it together. And the hardest part of it is the cooking of it, because Welsh cakes are not baked in the oven. They're cooked on a griddle or a stone. She cooked hers on a big stone that she would set on her stove.
So this is even something you could do like on a camping trip with
You
a
could,
griddle.
because you could do them in a frying pan.
Wow, nice.
You just have to, the hardest part is controlling the heat. You don't want it to be too hot.
Okay.
So we have 1 cup of butter flavored Crisco. And to that, I'm going to add 2.5 cups. And I am one of those bakers that doesn't do everything exact.
That's like me.
So
But I've had your cakes before at, I think, the Diana Gabaldon Tea or at the Celtic Festival or something, and they're always incredible.
oh, thank you. I was asked to make them for a local coffee shop, which I won't mention, but I thought that's too much work to do that all the time.
Yeah, this is fun. We don't
It's
want
fun
it to
when
be
you do
work.
it for, yeah. So 2.5 cups of sugar and 1/2 of flour, and it's self-rising flour.
Okay.
That's what she had me use, and then 1/2 cup of sugar. And then what I just do is take my pastry knife and I just start cutting it in.
That's much easier than hard butter.
Yeah. She actually, when she had them made with this, she liked it a lot. She says, oh, I wonder if I can get that over there. And I said, I don't know.
Well, I know they're wonderful.
So it just takes a while. It doesn't take too long. You just keep cutting it in, and you want to get it down like it would look if you were making pie dough or something like that. I use my hands a lot.
That's important.
And I did wash my hands before we started.
And it's going to be all blended, or do you want it like pea size?
A little bit small. You don't want any big chunks of the Crisco, but just blend it in nicely, and as she would say, until it looks good.
Until it looks good.
So that's what she told me. She just blend it till it looks good. And I make pies, so I just did it like I was doing a pie dough.
Well, this way we'll get to see what looks good is supposed to look like.
That's right. It's hard to tell. People want my recipe, and my recipe that I had was just the ingredients written down.
Oh, yeah.
So there, we're getting there.
Uh-huh.
It's almost, I think it's almost ready.
So it's getting a nice yellowy,
Gets a
the
little
white
yellow.
flour is disappearing.
Mm-hmm. And the sugar's really mixed in. It's not a lot of sugar in this recipe. They don't use a lot of sugar.
Well, the sweetness of the currants are so...
The currants are sweet, and
Yeah.
then we put a little tiny coating of castor sugar. It's what they use over there. And what I buy is the ultra fine baking sugar.
I was going to say, my sugar doesn't look like that.
If you get the ultra fine, it makes it really nice. And so now,
Now, it's
see,
still a little bit crumbly.
there's a little crumbly, but it's pretty much mixed up. So now to this, we're going to add our currants. Now you only need about a cup of currants.
Carefully measured, I see.
Yeah, I'm looking at my half cup there. And I like to try to break them up because when you get them, they're going to be all...
They stick together sometimes.
One time when I was going through, I swear I saw raisins.
Oh, because they were big?
They were really big, and I thought,
Now, are currants really different than raisins?
Yes,
or
they
are.
are.
They just baby raisins?
No, they're their own plant. And over in the UK, you can get a drink a black currant drink and a red currant drink, and they're very good. Currants are very popular over there.
They're kind of hard to find here sometimes.
They are, and one time when I went to shop for them, at the beginning of the pandemic, they said they weren't carrying them anymore.
Oh.
And so I went to another store and they had them, and I bought 2 packs.
Yes.
So I'd have them. But it's just it's a matter of if the store's not selling them. I think that's about a cup, do you think?
Looks good. A little more for extra taste.
That's right. So we just mix this in.
And you're using your hands.
Yeah.
Because the blender, you really couldn't use the blender anymore.
If you use a blender on this, it would chop up those currants even more.
Yeah.
And they're small anyway, but you don't want them all chopped up because then it would make it like a discolored thing instead of the lovely little currant in there. So now I'm going to add 1 egg, which I've broken up a little bit. And this is the hard part because she never gave me a measurement. A splash of milk.
Splash. That's very technical.
So a splash of milk, I would say, is a couple of tablespoons.
That's a healthy splash.
Yeah, it's a couple of tablespoons.
Okay.
And as you're mixing it, if you need more, you can splash more milk in.
And how do you know if you need more? Is
If it
sticking
doesn't
to
start sticking together.
Okay.
So it's a nice solid feel when it goes together.
Oh, that's looking yummy.
And this is sometimes why I use a little bit more of the milk because I don't want to mix it so much that it get glutinous. I'd rather just add a little more milk.
Yep.
And I didn't leave the top off, so.
It's beginning to hold together in clumps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we'll just give it a little bit more. There. Now it's starting to hold.
Oh, yeah. Now, there's no salt in this, is there?
No.
Huh. Very basic ingredients.
And because we're using the self-light rising flour, that has your baking soda and stuff like that in it. So you don't have to measure it. There are lots of recipes for Welsh cakes, and I've tried some of them, and they're nice. Some of them have spices in it, but we don't like the spices in our household. My husband says, I never had them that way. Because he had them the way his mother made them. Yep. Okay, so now we're all sticking together. So now what we're going to do is put it out on a little flour and press it out and cut them.
Okay. Do you need a rolling pin for that, or do you just press?
You can do either. Sometimes I just press it down. So let me get some of that off my hands. I'll use just a little more flour, and we'll just put it down. Take a big chunk.
So it is shaping like pie dough.
Yeah, it does look a lot like pie dough, I think. But a little more flavor.
And you're using the palm of your hand to get it down.
push those edges in so they don't get too.
That's what I do too. Or else you get the big cracks along the side
Yeah.
bed.
And I have broken a lot of them when I cook them. I always say bake them, but
But you cook them.
you cook them. And you want it to be anywhere from 1/4 to a 1/2 inch
Okay.
thick. And then if you get Welsh cakes in Wales, they're going to be that size,
The big one.
the big one. But I don't make them that size. I make them small because when I first made them, nobody had eaten them, and I thought, I don't want to give them something and
Right.
have them take a bite and say, oh,
No, thank you.
no thank you, I don't want that.
Some people really don't like raisins and currants.
Yeah, and so I thought if I make
Just
them
so
small,
strange.
like a little morsel, then they can just eat it and it'll be
That's what
fine.
I've always enjoyed about yours.
So I just press them out.
Like a biscuit.
Mhm. Sometimes it will lift with it, sometimes it won't.
This is too easy.
They really are very easy.
Oh, now I see I'm going to be making these a lot too.
You can add this to your repertoire and people will love it. Okay, so this is the first batch and we'll take this over to the griddle and we'll start that up and see what we come up with. I hadn't turned this on ahead because I didn't want it to get too hot.
And what temperature are you going to
I'm
use?
going to about 275 right now. The reason I'm going that place, let me grab a paper towel. The reason I'm going there is you don't want it too hot. You want your Welsh cakes to brown just a little bit because it's the heat underneath that's going to make them rise a little. And then if it gets too hot, it just goes really brown and
burns.
and I don't like anything like that. My husband loves them that way, so I always burn a few for him anyway.
Oh, he likes them more crispy?
He likes things crisp. No, he just likes things really well done.
Really well done.
Really
Okay.
well done.
Well, that's what I've always enjoyed. And when do you serve these? Is this a breakfast, typically a breakfast thing? Or
It would be more like at a tea.
tea? Okay.
And actually, when she would make them, she knew the kids or whoever was coming over for tea, so she would make them. They're really best served warm.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah, they're really good.
I don't think I've had that pleasure.
That's almost like the Welsh pancakes. I don't know if you've ever made those. We've made those
I
at home
haven't.
too. They're really good, but those need to be served warm, so I don't have those out for people very much.
And then do
Okay.
you have to put butter on this or
No.
anything? It's just because the butter is already,
Butter's already in it.
shortening's already in there.
Yeah. So hopefully, I would say the hardest part of the whole thing is the cooking of them.
And about how long will they take?
They take about 3 or 4 minutes, depending on the heat on your pan. You can hear
That's not
them?
very- yeah.
They kind
Starting
of
to
start
get
to
a little-
sizzle a
yeah.
little bit. And so you just watch them a little bit. They'll get a little shiny on the top.
Kind of melty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh yeah, they're sizzling. And then when do you add that special sugar?
After they're completely done. And I
Oh.
cool them a little bit. I don't put the sugar on hot. I put it on cold because you don't want too much sugar to cling to it. It's just a little lightness. And like I said, this sugar is ultra fine.
Yes, it's sticking to your fingers.
And
That's
over in
amazing.
England, it would be called castor sugar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They have different kinds of sugar than we do.
Mm-hmm.
They have the brown sugar. They have the granulated sugar, which is a thicker granulation than ours. It's
Like a
little bit-
turbinado?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, and that's what they use in tea and everything else, and in
Yeah.
a lot of their baking. And then they have the castor sugar, which is very fine.
Now, is that hard to find here?
No, it's not. This ultra fine baking sugar isn't bad, but looking for castor sugar, you wouldn't find it at all.
Oh, okay.
So after they've set for a minute or so, I usually will test one and And I use this little spatula just because it's easier to get underneath it. And I'll look, see?
It is browning.
So it's starting to brown.
Wow.
And some parts on the griddle are hotter than others.
Uh-huh.
That one's just barely. So,
Oh, this is easy and fun.
no, that one's not brown enough.
So you're going to flip it again?
I'll probably flip it again when.
Okay. So you can't really go wrong on these. I mean, what happens if you make them too thick? Is that a problem? Or
If you make them too thick, then it probably wouldn't bake all the way through. And if you make them, if the griddle's too hot,
that looks good.
and see, and you can tell
It's
some
getting hot.
some spots are hotter than others.
This is
See, that
quick.
one's hardly done at all. And I'm going to turn this down just a tiny bit.
So this doesn't take very long, but
It
you
doesn't
really got
take
to
long,
stay
but you
on
have
top
to
of
stay
it.
on top of it
Yep.
because you want to be sure that they're going to be cooked all the way through.
Mhm.
You don't want them to be raw inside. Like I said, when my husband does it, he burns them all the time.
I heard that. He burns them.
He burns them. But he's helpful, and he'll do this because this is the part that's the hardest for me, standing and doing that. It was okay for years, but now I'm getting too old.
Oh, that looks so good. And they smell good too.
No, that
Oh,
one.
no,
I'm
that
gonna-
one's soft.
That one I'm going to break.
Oh,
Yep.
we're just going to have to try
We'll just
that
have
one
to
then.
eat that one because it broke.
Now, you were telling me sometimes you have this with clotted cream.
Yes, it's really decadent.
It sounds decadent.
So
I think I always like clotted. I don't really care for the clotted
okay,
cream
so
by
these have to
itself,
come off.
but with lemon curd, that's wonderful.
Mhm. And you can put things on this, but we don't usually end up putting things on. See, it just all of a sudden will start to get really hot.
Yep.
And then you go, okay, that's enough.
And the taster.
And the taster one.
That's the best
Okay.
one.
We'll get that right off there. Okay, so after these cool for a few minutes, we just take our sugar, plop it in the sugar, flip it, and I broke it. And
I was going to say, is the cooling, does that
that-
help them to stay together a little bit
It
more?
does. It helps them. It's just like any, when you're baking cookies and you pull them out, you
Yes.
leave them on the pan for a minute or so. That just finishes baking the inside.
Yep.
So that's what these do when they sit. It just finishes baking them.
So the finished product looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. They almost look dusty and floury. The sugar is so fine, but
Yeah.
they're wonderful. So I know what I'm making tonight. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is wonderful, and I'm going to enjoy this because it's so simple.
They really are very simple.
Well,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks.